as we grew, things got better. So for example, when we got transferred to Reno, Nevada to take over the hotel there, we got to live inside the hotel. They had actually built an apartment out of 5 of the rooms. Okay, imagine what you get with living in a hotel. Free maid service, a swimming pool on premise, a restaurant with chefs and waiters that you could go eat at for free, have to pay tips. And the best part was the hotel would pay for our food bill at grocery stores. So now we could afford any groceries we wanted. We went from having nothing to suddenly 5, 6 years later, having all the food we could ever imagine paid for by the company because we lived in this hotel. It was amazing.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Rich Your Soul. Today's guest is Richard Walker, who shares how to live life on your terms. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Rich Your Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Rich Your Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richyoursoul.com. Who's in charge of your life? You or someone else? Do you have total control and decide your destiny? We all can choose and change our path to live in alignment with what we want and love to do. Many times, our mindsets and beliefs hold us back from what's possible. As you listen to Rich's journey, think about how much he overcame and how he continues to show up. That is what it takes. Richard Walker is CEO and co-founder of Quick. Having started over 10 companies since the age of 12, he's the host of the Customer Wins podcast and author of 2 books and a dad. Prior to starting Quick, Richard was a financial advisor and a business consultant with Arthur Andersen. He started Quick in 2002 to help people spend less time doing paperwork and more time doing what they love. Let's meet Rich and see what he has to share. Welcome to Rich Your Soul, Rich Walker. It's great to have you join us today.
It's my pleasure, Rocky. Thanks for having me.
And I am excited for our conversation. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Oh, man. Isn't that where we got all of our lessons? So my story is my father was a minister when I was born. And I imagine they didn't make awesome money, but enough to live, obviously. And when I was 4.5 years old, my parents decided to leave the church. And in leaving the church, it was a huge rift. My parents had been married, I think, 10 years or something. But imagine all your belief systems falling out of favor and becoming in conflict. So they suddenly had to leave this church, which was very, very restrictive, I guess maybe a cult. And his entire belief system fell apart. So he turned to drugs and alcohol. And in doing that, I mean, that left us rather devastated. We didn't have money. My parents divorced. My mom had no job skills. And we found ourselves on welfare for the next 18 months. My mom would go do things like go to the grocery store and try to get produce out of the dumpster that was still good, but just cut out the bad parts so that we had more food to eat. And she likes to say we ate a lot of beans to survive. But, my mom was very scrappy. She grew up on a farm. So she was like, well, food falls on the ground from a tree. What's the big deal? We pick it up and eat it. No problem. So what's the difference? And she also figured out ways to make it work. For example, she she ran an illegal daycare with 15 kids in her house to try to pay the bills. After my father moved out, we had another family come live in our house with us and share the bills. So we just tried to make things work. Unfortunately, it turned into bad decisions as well. She hooked up with a very abusive bad boyfriend. It certainly helped us financially, but at some point you have to escape that situation. And so, I mean, imagine I go from 4, maybe 6 or 7 years old at this point. We have to escape that bad situation, and we moved 2 states away. It felt like getting up in the middle of the night, putting everything that could fit into a VW Beetle and driving for 2 days to get to Salt Lake City, Utah, and go live with my aunt. And then she met my stepfather. And I think within 6 months, they were married. So it was like this really fast change. Thankfully, he was successful. He was a food and beverage manager for Holiday Inn. And then within a year, I think he became the general manager. And then we got to move. Honestly, another part of my story, Rocky, is that I have moved almost every year of my life as a kid. Here I am an adult. I'm almost 50 years old this year, and I've moved 33 times in my life, most of which happened in the first 20 to 30 years. So, yeah, I had all these different challenges and struggles. And I think as we grew, things got better. So, for example, when we got transferred to Reno, Nevada to take over the hotel there, we got to live inside the hotel. They had actually built an apartment out of 5 of the rooms. Okay, imagine what you get with living in a hotel: free maid service, a swimming pool on premise, a restaurant with chefs and waiters that you could go eat at for free, have to pay tips. And the best part was the hotel would pay for our food bill at grocery stores. So now we could afford any groceries we wanted. We went from having nothing to suddenly 5, 6 years later, having all the food we could ever imagine paid for by the company because we lived in this hotel. It was amazing. But we kept moving. My parents, my stepfather and mother divorced when I was in high school. I went to college. I became super poor again because I was just trying to make it work. And I could keep going.
How did you deal with all these ups and downs?
It's a hard question to really fully answer because as a little kid, you're very resilient. Like you just go with the flow. Kids will find fun in anything they do, as long as they feel safe and they have a place to work, a place to do what they need to do. And there were lots of times we didn't feel safe and we didn't have that. Like I said, my mom had an abusive boyfriend. There was a night that they came home from out partying or whatever, and my mom had a black eye. He had stitches. Like there was something that happened. I don't actually fully know what happened. So that's scary, right? And so you have some of those challenges, but my mom is a very, very strong person. And throughout this process, she chose to invest in herself. And over, from my age 4 to 14, she was constantly reading books and improving herself. Dr. Wayne Dyer, for example. And so that way, she kept improving herself and also us. And I remember this really distinct conversation where she said to us, happiness is a choice. And I'll give you the context. She was picking us up from seeing our father in California. They met in Vegas and driving us back to Salt Lake City. And she then informed my brother and sister. My sister's older, my brother's younger. Told the 3 of us, guess what? I have news for you. We're moving to Reno, Nevada. And my brother and I like, yay, great, cool. I mean, he's 4 or 5 and I'm 7, or, he's 6 and I'm 8, something like that. We didn't know any better. We're just like, yeah, this is great. Here's my sister a few years older than me. She's bawling her eyes out. She's so upset because she has moved every year of her life too. And now she's got to make friends all over again. Oh my gosh, devastating. And she's at an age where she needs her friends. And that's where the context of the conversation came up. My mom said, hey, the fact is we're moving. That's not changeable. So how do you want to deal with it? How do you want to choose to feel about it? She said, you can be upset. I understand that. It's shock. But guess what? You can choose to be happy. I'll give you some things to think about that could be happy. You'll have a swimming pool for the first time in your life. We'll have, food paid for, all the things I told you a minute ago. So I really credit my mom with instilling these kind of values and beliefs that we could choose how we want to feel about a circumstance. And she always tried to make the most fun out of whatever it is we were doing. Being poor is not an excuse. Just because you're poor doesn't mean you don't have things to play with or can't invent new games. We were the king of inventing games with no toys, I promise you.
Was that difficult for you to, like, because you always had to find new friends, I guess. But the good news is you don't get tired of them, right? Because by the time you get tired of them, they're gone.
Yeah, right. How many times I've had a falling out with somebody? Oh, I don't like you. I'm moving. So what? Friendship's a really strange thing for me because I learned that there were two types of friends: circumstantial friends, the ones that are doing the same thing you're doing at the time you're doing it and the place you're doing it. Well, that happened every new year to me. Or the lifelong friends, the people who really, really get you. They think the same way. They have maybe the same experiences and they bond with you on those challenges, et cetera. And you get a couple of those in your lifetime. And that's the person you can call up 10 years later and just rekindle everything because they're really lifelong friends. They're rare. So I've figured out that friends were very transient or can be. And I actually witnessed friendship from a different perspective than most people. So the kids who grew up in the same elementary, junior high, and high school, they had real problems with the popular kids because you were in it or you weren't, and you had 10 years to develop that or you didn't, right? I was always the outsider. So I just looked at these people and kind of laughed like, you don't know what friendship is. You don't treat each other well. I don't want to be part of your group. I don't care if you're popular. I've never been popular. I'm always the outsider.
And you don't feel the need, because if in the back of your mind, it's always like, it's funny because when I was in corporate, that was always the way we dealt with corporate. If you don't like it, don't worry. It's going to change again in 6 months. Right. And it's like, yeah, whatever. Like you let go of it all and do that.
I'll say this, Rocky. And again, I thank my mom in various ways for this. You can be who you want to be. And I learned that nobody can affect how I feel except me. Rocky, I didn't say this yet. I was bullied. I mean, imagine being the new kid. How many times I was bullied. And one of the things I learned, I think it was first grade, I was bullied by these second graders, bigger kids. And they would chase me after school. They would kick me. They'd knock me down. I mean, I remember being swung by them and thrown in the grass and getting grass stains and hitting sprinklers and crying on my way home, et cetera. So one day I see them coming and I tuck myself into the hedge to hide. And they saw me and they came up to me. So now I'm terrified, right? They're opening the hedge. I'm blocked in and they're like, what are you doing? I said, I'm hiding from the bullies. They're like, what do you mean? I said, didn't you see them? Those other bullies? They're coming for me. They're like, oh, no, they're not. We'll protect you. And suddenly they became my friends. And they became my friends for the rest of that school year. It was amazing. And that triggered something in me. And I realized I could turn any bully into my friend wherever I went. And so every time I moved to a new place, the first thing I did was figure out who is the bully. And I'd find a way to make that person my friend. And so now I always had a bulldog on my side. And I've done that throughout my life, frankly. I'm not weak. Don't misread it. But I know how to identify the people who are going to be, full of themselves and strong-armed, et cetera, and get them to like me so they want to work for me instead of against me.
Smart man. Do you know where your mother came up with these beliefs and attitudes? Because she clearly went through a lot, and yet she also thrived and dealt with it and continued to grow and teach all of you.
I know she read a lot of books. I know she did a lot of self-improvement stuff. I don't think that's enough. I think you have to have something within you to actually take in that information and turn it into something, right? So I have to believe that her own upbringing, being very poor on a farm, making do with nothing, having brothers and sisters. She's what is she, like, family of 6 kids, that is. So I think her ability to get through any kind of circumstance. I mean, Rocky, I'll tell you something funny. They were so poor, her father tried to feed them grass for breakfast. It's good enough for the cows. Why isn't it good enough for the humans? Like to save money. I mean, that's not even good. So she learned this sense of resiliency and survival instincts and turned it into positive. So I think there's something innate in her that allowed her to take the lessons she learned in self-improvement studies and then all the experiences she had and keep asking, how can I be better? How can I be happier? I generally see her as an optimistic, positive person throughout her life, no matter what she's been through. And she's been through a lot. So I don't know exactly, but are we born with it? Is it the experience? And as a father, I'm asking that, like, what am I doing for my kids if they're spoiled or if they have everything they need?
And that is what I've found. When you spoil kids, you create massive issues. And so you've got to have this right mix of resilience and desire and grit, and at the same time, appropriate spoiling. Right? And I don't know what that right mix is, but I do know that if kids have it too easy, at least that's what we've seen with our extended family, it creates massive, massive issues.
Yeah. I'm okay with my kids struggling and trying to figure things out because it is magic when they figure it out. And it's hard to watch. It's hard to watch them be upset or struggle or what have you. But I've been through enough of that struggle. I have to let them do it. They have to see the value of doing it.
Yeah. Appropriate.
Yeah. But different, they're not hungry. Like they don't have any food issues. They don't have any food insecurities like we did. That's not necessarily a challenge I want to give them. I've told them it could be a challenge. I've told them what the reality was like when I was a kid. I try to help them see it, but they don't feel it, right? There's different ways, but I don't know.
So true. So you go to college, you come out, you were highly successful very quickly. How were you able to do that?
So I think a lot of it is, again, through college, I was exceptionally poor. I paid my own way to go to USC, a private school. And I always figured out how to get through the situation I was in. And part of that figuring it out was working for people. So when I was in college, I worked crazy. I worked hard and I worked for big companies, IBM, John Hancock, Paine Webber. And I got a lot of experience. So by the time I'm getting close to graduation and I'm interviewing for the next job, man, my interview skills were so good. I had already interviewed 100 times. And even though my grades were lower, I had this background of working at these companies and this real world experience to draw from. So I was ahead of the curve then. My first job out of college was at Arthur Andersen in business consulting. That was an amazing ground to grow on. I'm exposed to Fortune 500 companies, to really high levels of thinking and creativity and, good people. So I got exposed to all this. I also got to test out my own theories on leadership and management and make them happen. In fact, when I left Arthur Andersen, partly I left because I wasn't being challenged enough and I couldn't have enough freedom. I left to go work with a small boutique consulting firm. And in that first job, I was put into a job position where I was the only person from my company running the project. I had 4 other consulting teams, different companies I had to manage of different expertise, plus the client, about 25 people. I ran this project. We had a 4-month project to get something done that was literally impossible. We had to put in new software that was untested, brand new to the market in beta. It connected the internet with e-commerce, which had never been done for that product or in general. And if we didn't succeed, the customer would lose all their funding and go out of business. So imagine this, 5 different teams. I'm the youngest person on the team. I'm the manager. And I worked 32 hours a week. That's all it was necessary. I carried us under budget, on time. Everybody worked really well together and was happy. And I proved to myself that I could manage and lead the way that I thought it should be done. And it worked. So that's partly why I was successful, because I had those opportunities and those thoughts around what makes great leadership and management, and go do it.
What makes great leadership and management?
I had a very simple thing with my team. I said to everybody in a big group, I remember it, I said, look, you guys all have way more experience than me. You have way more knowledge than me. Therefore, my job's not to tell you what to do. My job is to empower you to do your best work. My job is to communicate and make it easier for you to get the job done that you need. So you need to work with me as the communication hub to make sure all the teams are working together at the right speed in the right ways. Let me help you reduce conflict with each other. Let me help you prioritize and put the right things in the right place at the right time. But mostly, let me empower you to do what you're paid to do, because I don't know your job and nobody else does. So go do it the best you can and let me help you do that. So imagine a 24-year-old saying this to 35-year-olds and everybody else. Well, I mean, first of all, what's their opinion of some kid, some 24-year-old running this massive project, right? And I stepped in and did that, and they said, okay. And then they proved it over and over again. They'd come to me with conflicts and we'd solve it, the challenges, and we'd solve it. We need another resource, we got it. And so we magically did it. They worked really, really hard. And I had to give the appearance of working just as hard as them. But frankly, I didn't have to, because they were doing such a good job.
And I think that's where people get it wrong. You're constantly told you have to work hard. And I don't think you have to work hard. Again, if you think you have to do that, you will. And then you create more work because you're working hard, creating more crap that's unnecessary.
I have 12 years of proof of that, Rocky. When I started my current company, I spent 12 years working 80-hour weeks, thinking if I worked hard enough, if I did 2 jobs, 3 jobs, we'd get farther, faster, better. Oh my gosh, that was so untrue. And the catalyst was, I promised myself when I had my first child that I would slow down and work 35, most 40, but 35 hours a week. And I kept that promise to myself when he was born. Not only did I take a few weeks off to enjoy that process, but I went back to work and only worked 35 hours a week. My gosh, I went through years of guilt of not working hard enough. But you know what happened? It was amazing. I stopped playing in the whirlwind. I stopped doing all the stupid stuff. I stopped responding to minutia that didn't need me. And I delegated like crazy because I just could not do it myself. I didn't have another 45 hours to put in anymore. So it forced me to delegate. Do you know what the outcome was? 50% growth for the next 3 years. My company started taking off because I stepped out of the way finally, and I just didn't realize it.
I tell business owners, the number one obstacle in your business is the reflection in the mirror. You are the bottleneck that prevents the business from being successful. So you need to get out of the way.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it can never grow and be successful. So you had the early job, you had success there. You also made a lot of money, and then you had some ahas.
So yeah, there's a few in there. When I finished that project, that 4-month project, I really didn't want to keep doing that because it was away from my home. It was just not what I wanted to do. So I decided at that point I would go join my mom and her business doing consulting. I knew I could make a lot of money doing it. We got an early project win and made a bunch of money very quickly. And then I coasted for 2 months. I played video games, just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And then I got a call from somebody who I had met on that prior project who said, hey, we have a project going with this startup we're funding, and we need you. We need you to come in and be a project manager for us. It took like 3 months to get to a point where they're ready to say yeah. And here was the crazy thing, Rocky. At Arthur Andersen, they would bill for my time anywhere from $180 to $300 an hour and up. How much do they pay me? Way, way, way less than that. So here's an opportunity to work on my own. And I'm thinking, well, I should charge $100 an hour. And then the second week I say, no, I should charge $125. And the third week I start thinking, no, I really should charge $150. And by the time I get to this 4th phone call with this gentleman, and he says, Rich, let's go. What is your rate? I heard myself say $200 an hour, and then I shut up. And I sat in silence, uncomfortable silence, waiting for a reaction. And his reaction was laughter. He's like, man, Rich, I knew it. You are priced exactly what I told them you'd be priced at. Now, Rocky, I don't know how to take that other than, oh my gosh, they're willing to pay my rate. It could mean I undervalued myself because they could have paid me more. But $200 an hour for the number of hours I was working, that translated to $360,000 a year in income to me. So I was over the moon. I was stoked. And I got this job to do this work with them. They were happy with my work. And I was making all this money driving one of my dream cars, my only dream car by that point. And I'm saying to myself, driving home one day, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not appreciating this money. I need to be poor again. I need to feel the hunger again. And part of this is coming out because I actually didn't like my job. I did not like consulting and being part of something for a short period of time and then walking away. I wanted to be part of a product. I wanted to actually build recurring revenue that made me money while I slept, not just for the hours I worked. Even if I could make hundreds of dollars per hour, I didn't want that kind of lifestyle. So that was that catalyst. Boy, you better be careful what you wish for, man, because I got poor again.
That happens, right?
Yeah. I decided to become a financial advisor, and I joined my mentor in his business, and I went immediately from making $360 a year to $35,000 a year. And within a year of that, about a year after that, we came up with our software, and I left my mentor in his business. I paid him back that $35,000, by the way, because the deal was I'm joining him in his business. I have no income and nothing to contribute except my time. It was awesome. He said, look, I'll split my revenue with you right now. He didn't need it. He had a pension and everything else. So he's like, I don't need this money. So I'll split it with you right now. But we have a written agreement that if we part ways within 2 years, you pay me back what I gave you. So that's what ended up happening. We parted ways because we decided we wanted to do different things, and I had to pay him back. So guess what? Say goodbye to the 401k I had, drained that out, say goodbye to the dream car, sold that, paid him back all that money. It was more than 35 at that point, paid him back all the money. And I literally started my company with zero money in my pocket, zero income, and bills that were probably $2,000, $2,500 a month. So yeah, I became really, really poor. Careful what you wish for.
And I know that turned out well.
In the long run. Define well, because for 4 years, my income was $1,000 a month. That was my salary. That's all the company could possibly pay me. And it didn't even do it consistently every month. And my rent was higher than that. So how do you survive? And I don't know. I honestly don't know if this is a normal thing or not, but I never knew how I was going to pay rent on the first of the month. If I just paid rent, I don't know in 30 days how I'll pay rent again. And yet I never, ever missed a payment. Not once, not even late. And even on the 30th of the month, sometimes I didn't know how I was going to pay rent the next day. And somebody would make a credit card payment to our system to buy our software, and hey, I had the money suddenly. Or I'd borrow it off a credit card or whatever. There were so many different things that happened. So I never missed a payment. So the question is, how much sleep did I lose over that? My answer is none. That never bothered me. And I'll tell you why, Rocky, because I learned that money is a tool. Money is not an emotion. It can be emotional, but it doesn't have to be an emotion. It's a tool. And I felt that if I need the money, it'll be there. I will find a way to make it be there, whether I have to sell something, whether I have to borrow it, whether I have to cash out something, whether I just have to get lucky with a customer who pays us all of a sudden. I always found a way. Therefore, I just didn't worry about it. It didn't stress me out. Ask my wife that question. Oh my gosh, she could never live that way.
I was going to say for most people, and that's the reason I asked you the first question I asked you. Most people have a ton of emotions with money, and they're all tied up. And most people probably aren't even aware of where their money stories come from, how they develop, how they're affecting their day-to-day life. And just because I'm so tuned into it, I'll have conversations with people and I'll hear that little comment under their breath. And it's a lot of time, just because that's what I'm tuned into, it's a money comment. Mm-hmm. And maybe you're talking about going out to a nice dinner or a vacation. I could never afford that. It just slips in, or must be nice, right? Little envy there. And yeah, it's interesting to see how much all of those emotions are tied up with money.
So I got to tell you another story that we haven't revealed, which is, being really, really poor and not having what I wanted as a kid. At 8 years old, I went to a friend's house and he had a radio controlled car that was amazing. So imagine back in the early 80s, if you're into radio controlled cars, they're kits. They could be really fast, 35 miles per hour. They go off road, they jump. And I saw this car and I was just in love with it. It was amazing. Well, guess what? It cost $300. That's like $1,300 today. So it's a lot of money. I didn't have that kind of money. Of course not. I asked my mom, no way was she going to buy that for me, right? No way. So I set out to get it. I started saving my money. Any kind of birthday and Christmas money I got, if I could rake leaves for somebody, if I could sell candy around the neighborhood, I started selling wire bracelets. I did anything I could to make money. So one day, my neighbor behind my house and his son, my brother and I would play with his son and we'd hop each other's fences and jump on the trampoline, whatever. The neighbor comes out with what's called water weenies. So surgical tubing with a ballpoint pen tip, just the tip into one side of the tube with a knot in the other side. And you take a cone-shaped nozzle and fill up the balloon of the latex tubing, and then it squirts 30 feet. So it's a water fight toy called Water Weenie. And prior to Super Soaker, which came out in 1986, your choices were water balloons, squirt guns that went 5 feet, or maybe the garden hose, which was attached to a house. So he comes out with these water weenies for his son and my brother and I to play with, and we just have a ball. And other kids in the neighborhood are like, I want one, I want one. And then he took them back. He wouldn't let us keep them. I noticed in his shed, he had a roll of tubing, 25 feet of tubing. So I asked him, I said, hey, how much for that roll of tubing? And he told me a price. I don't remember what it was, $20, whatever. I ran home, got the money, came back immediately, said, I want it. I'll buy it. So he sold it to me. I then went to my house, found every pen I could and destroyed it, made a bunch of water weenies and went around my neighborhood and sold out in a couple of days. I went back and bought more tubing from him and sold out again. I brought 25 feet of tubing with me to the beach to go camping. And I got on my bike and I sprayed every kid I could find. And I had 20 kids chasing me because I squirted them. I dropped my bike and say, who wants to buy one? They'd run back to their campsites and come back with money. So my uncle sees this. I was camping with him. He sees this and says, hey, next year I'm running 4th of July, chili cook-off and all the ceremonies at a local park. I'll get you a booth if you want to sell these. So that summer I had made enough to get to the $300 to buy the car. So guess what I did? I bought the car. 6 months goes by. My uncle reminds me summer's coming and I could get this booth. And I'm like, okay, go to my neighbor. How much for 1,000 feet of tubing? Guess what? $300. I don't have $300. I have a car. So I asked him, I said, hey, your son's birthday is coming up. Would you trade me the tubing for the car? I'll give you all the spare stuff. He did it. I consider him an angel. I don't know how he could assume to do that. He did it. His kid got the awesome car. I got the tubing. I wrote Scripto Pen Company a letter saying, I'm doing a project. Can I have sample pen tips? They sent me a box of 5,000 pen tips. So I had all the supplies. My brother and I cut lengths, tied knots, and then showed up on 4th of July, started selling at 7 a.m. And by 1 p.m., we were sold out. Rocky, my $300 investment, after paying my brother some money, after buying everybody dinner, yielded me more than $1,100 in one day. So you want to ask my belief about money? My belief is if you give people something they want at a reasonable price, they'll pay you money. You can actually make a ton of it if you want to. So I was struck. I'm like, wow, I can make money. Why are we going to be poor?
I'm wondering where, because you at this point, you're how old? Like 8 or 9 years old?
12. I'm 12 by this. It took me 4 years to save up for the car. Yeah. So I made my first 1,000 by age 12.
But still, you had something in you that allowed you to see opportunity and take risk and go for it and kind of find your way through, which I don't think is normal. Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform.
I can tell you another story. I actually told this yesterday to a friend. When I was around 5 years old and we went to a laundromat to do our laundry, because that's the best we could do, there's always a door in the back of the laundromat where you can park. And so I watched a lady drive up in a gray Mercedes. I loved cars, so I knew, the symbol, et cetera. But I had no idea what luxury was or performance. I was just like, it's a car, right? And certainly I didn't think anything of Mercedes because I liked Corvettes and Porsches. So I see this Mercedes and she walks into the laundromat, goes straight up to the soda machine, drops in a quarter or two and gets a soda. And that's how I knew she was wealthy. She could afford soda. And so now I knew Mercedes meant wealth. So it's a strange correlation, right? Ask me what one of my definitions of wealth is today. It's a second refrigerator in your house for drinks. I don't drink soda, by the way. I don't care. It's not about Pepsi or Coke. It's literally the amount of wealth to have a second fridge just dedicated to drinks that you can buy and store. That is absolute wealth to me. So yeah, I got this idea early on that there were things that we could have if we had the money that I was not allowed to have because we didn't have the money. And that started driving me. If I wanted more candy from 7-Eleven, I'd go shovel more snow. I'd go figure out a way to get the money. So it was this idea of like, money is needed to get something you want. So that therefore money is a tool. I'm going to go get more of those tools and make it work for me.
Now we just have to figure out how to imprint this into every 5-year-old.
Oh my gosh. I'm trying so hard with my kids.
Is it working?
Yes and no. Yes and no. There's a strange thing. So I've given them opportunities to earn money. And this year I started them actually getting an allowance so they could save money. And by the way, there's something else I've done that they don't really know about. Since the day they were born, I've been putting money into an account for them to grow. And I've done this for a couple of reasons. It's not even for their college. I don't really even believe in college. I don't want to fund their college. If they want college, they have to figure that out. But I'm building up this account for them for a couple of reasons. By the time they're age 10 or 12, I want them to see this account and I want them to see the performance history and start to understand compound growth and investments and things like that. So they understand the financial instruments. Second, I want them to have an idea to start their own business at age 10 or 12 and have the funds to do it, have the startup capital to do something. So that's why I'm setting that money aside. But in the meantime, they have been able to earn money and save up money. And I gave them a bonus. I said, if you can get to $100, I will give you a 10% bonus as a congratulations. And so guess who got there first? My 6-year-old, not my 9-year-old. And then my 9-year-old's like, oh, he has more money than me. I got to work on this. So then, we did a garage sale recently. They got to get the proceeds from it. They set up a snow cone shack and started making snow cones and getting proceeds from it. There's been opportunities to mow lawns. And so they've done that. Here's where I struggle. In the advent of Amazon.com and any.com where you can just go shop on your phone and buy things, you no longer receive or look at catalogs in the mail and dream about toys or dream about things. So when I was a kid, I'd look at the KB's ad or the Toys R Us ad and go, oh my gosh, I wish I could have that. They don't see that mail. I also had RC car catalogs of parts or vehicles. I mean, for 4 years, I looked at RC car catalogs, dreaming about getting this car, and I built the dream and the desire. So how do we do that for kids when it's all digital these days? And I don't give them access to that digital.
Well, A, they see it with their friends, or B, take them to the toy store, or I mean, I taught my kids by taking them to back then it was Target, but I said, we're going to the store, but that doesn't mean we're buying something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I taught them you can go to the store and not buy anything. And I guess at each age, they, through their friends or through school, they started to see things and then they would work on buying them. And for my son at a young age, it was Pokemon cards. And
Mhm.
we would go to the store. I go, look how much the Pokemon cards are here. And then I'd be like, well, look at what this package costs. Because if you buy more of them, the cost per card goes down. And I'd show them the math. And then we'd go to eBay because eBay was relatively new then. I'm like, you could get 150 cards on eBay, but you're going to have to wait 2 weeks for them to arrive. And it's going to be $20 instead of $2. But you're getting like so much greater for that.
Yeah.
And I think we did well with that. I think each kid's different. The one is much more money motivated than the other one. And it's funny because it's the opposite of where they were young.
Hmm. We've done similar things. I've taken them to a store to look and browse, but not buy. Anytime we go to a grocery store, we'll walk through that little toy section they have just to entice them, not to let them buy. I will allow them to spend their money. Don't get me wrong, but I will discourage really bad decisions. And bad decisions are things they're going to use once and throw away that cost $10. It's a waste of money. I try to help them understand that. I let them do it a few times, by the way.
Mm-hmm. You have to.
But the other thing I've done, there's two other things I've done is we got back into RC cars in the past year. So I have had a car. My son's got cars for Christmas or birthdays or whatever. But then I upgraded my car and they had to upgrade theirs with their own money. And now I have a better, bigger car. And my son, my older one's like, I want that car. I want that size car. I'm like, save your money. Save your money. You're going to have to do it yourself. He's like, I'm going to get it for Christmas. I'm like, nope, you're going to save your money. Second thing we did is I taught him a little bit about how to shop. He's outgrown his bike. So for his birthday, he got a appropriately sized bike. But I didn't surprise him with it. I said, I want to get you this as your gift for your birthday. A reasonable amount of money. We didn't go crazy. But we're going to go shopping for it. And you're going to test bikes and you're going to sit on them and you're going to look and you're going to try it out and see what you like. You're going to learn how to shop. And then we're going to go home and sleep on it. And then I'm going to ask you again. And if you want to go back to the store, we'll do that. So we did those things and we found the bike and it was different than what he originally thought it would be. So then when he got it, it was exactly what he wanted and had chosen. And he knows the value of it. And the third part, I don't know if you've seen this TikTok. This guy talks about most people suck at being poor. If you want nice things, just get old things and make them nice. Mm-hmm. And he says, nobody knows how to fix something until they do. So go try, go figure it out. Well, one of the keys to both being poor and being wealthy is having things that last, which also means taking care of them. I am really, really good at taking care of my things. My 5-year-old car looks like a brand new car off the showroom still. So I'm teaching that too to my kids to learn how to take care of their things so that they last longer and they get more value from them, which also teaches something else. When you buy something that's poorly made and you take care of it and it falls apart still, you realize poor quality is expensive. And you start to learn that I'd rather buy, say, a better quality used something than a poor quality new something, and then fix it or take better care of it. So those are some of the qualities I'm trying to instill in my boys.
The biggest thing we did was teach our kids how to negotiate. Because I can tell you something, if you're 8, 9, 10, 12, everyone's a sucker for your negotiation skills. Right? Like, it's amazing what you can negotiate. We taught our kids how to do that in different opportunities. And so now they're okay doing that. And they realize it's just part of life. And it's another skill that's kind of not covered. So you've also written a couple of books. There's one that I kind of want to chat about. What inspired you to write the book, It's My Life, and I Can Change It If I Want to?
So the story there is I never expected to write a book. I don't even like reading books. I'll listen to them. I love listening to them, but I don't like to read books. In 2007, my sister and brother-in-law started communicating with me at the beginnings of a divorce without them saying that they were getting divorced, without knowing that was going to be the outcome. They were having challenges. I was really good friends with my brother-in-law and of course my sister too, but they both independently wanted to talk to me. I've generally been a good communicator. So I started giving them feedback and helping them with things. And they both independently, over a 3-month period, said, Rich, you really need to write a book about this. Well, on Thanksgiving that year, I got frustrated with them because they were now trying to treat me as the conduit to each other. And I said, no. I'm not communicating on your behalf. You need to make the changes. So I got so frustrated. The day after Thanksgiving, I sat down and started writing the book. And then I stopped watching TV until Christmas because I spent anywhere from 1.5 to 4 hours every day writing the book, and it flowed. I had no choice but to write it. It felt like it had to come out. And I gave them hand-bound copies for Christmas saying, you've inspired me to write this book. I really hope it'll help you. It did not help them. Family is the worst catalyst to test things on. They don't do it. So it took me another 4 years to actually publish it because I had this problem of how do I reconcile telling somebody I'm this software technologist, efficiency guru with also self-improvement. And a good friend of mine helped me figure it out. He actually challenged me. He said, hey, have your employees read your book? I'm like, why would my employees read my book? We're a software company. What does it have to do with anything? He says, you are your company. If they don't know you, how are they going to be part of your company? And truthfully, Rocky, I don't think my company culture had taken any kind of root before that. So I did share my book with them, and he also helped me realize that he ran me through an exercise that helped me figure out what is my core purpose in life. At the backbone of everything I do, my job is to empower others to be their best version of themselves. And now I could reconcile everything. So how do I do that? With my software, I empower you to do your best work. I eliminate forms work so you can do better work. With my book, I literally empower you to do your best for yourself, because my book is a 4-step method on how to change and how to change any kind of behavior for a better behavior. So anything I do in life now is measured against that lightning rod of, am I helping you become your best version of yourself?
That's powerful. I find everybody wants things, but not many people are willing to take the action to get what they want. Do you talk about that at all in the book, of how to get moving, so to speak, towards your goal?
100%. In fact, the problem I have with most self-improvement books, and I've read quite a few, is you'll read the book for 3, 4, 6 weeks, however long it takes you to finish it. And what do they talk about? Oh, why this happens, who it happens to, how is it impacting your life, why you should change it, blah, blah, blah. When did they say, here are the steps to change it? Very, very, very few books give you a recipe for success, like do this, 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 right? My book is like a primer for any other self-improvement you're going to do, because it's a 4-step methodology that you can apply to any kind of change you want. So I read the book Codependent No More. How do you stop being a codependent? Start working on the behaviors, which are actually beliefs. So in my book, I'll lay out the 4 steps. And man, I always worry if I get this in the wrong order because it's coming off the top of my head. But number 1 is you have to believe you can change. Now, when I say that, a lot of people have a lot of reasons why they can't change. Parents, it's because of the way it is. I'm poor. I don't care. I'm not asking for that. I'm not asking you to believe you can change the thing you want to change. I'm saying, do you believe you can change? Did you ever get a haircut? Then you changed. Did you ever read a book? Then you changed. Did you ever take a class? You changed. Did you put on different clothes? I'm sorry, you changed. Accept that. If you can believe that you can change anything, then any one thing, then you can change other things too. Second step, this is going to answer your question more directly. You have to have a motivational desire to succeed. A motivational desire is a desire that is stronger than your desire to keep it the same. So you have to feel the pain is so great that you want to move. The fear has to be so strong that you want to change it. And I give you a methodology for figuring out if you have a motivational desire or not. Because a lot of people say, oh, I want to lose weight, or I want to be a better person, or I want to make more money, but they don't take the action. Why? Because they never sat down to diagnose the pros and the cons, the weighted balances of, if I stay the same, it's this. If I change, it'd be 10x this. And then see the power of that. The third step, and if you want to ask me a question about the second one, interrupt. The third step then is the performance of the change. And the first thing you have to do is look at the behavior. And so this is how I like to think of it. Think of a tree. lots of individual leaves all around this tree, but as a whole, you are the tree, right? Your whole persona and behavior set is the tree. Each leaf is one behavior. That could be your behavior towards money or relationships or work or whatever. And let's say you want to change that behavior. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you walk around feeling like nothing's ever good enough. You want your boss's job. You want your best friend's car. You want your sister's vacation. And you're just like always unhappy because it's never good enough. Everything you're doing is never good enough, no matter how hard it is, how hard you work, that is. So what do? You look at that behavior. Here's what step 3 says. Start asking yourself questions about that behavior. Don't start with why. Leave why out of the equation because why leads to negative answers. Start with what, how, when, who, where, etc. So when does this behavior manifest? Well, whenever I see a better car than mine, whenever I see a better vacation than mine. Who does it impact? It's impacting me. It's impacting my family because they feel this energy. Where does it happen? When does it happen, etc. Ask those questions of yourself. And in the answers you give yourself, this is the one thing I love about the brain. If you ask it a question, it'll give you an answer every time. I'm not saying it's the right answer, which is why I don't want you to say, why does this happen? Because then your answer is typically like, because you're lazy, because you're dumb, or something, not helpful. Look at these answers, and there's a clue in there. Look at the answer that resonates with you most, you feel strongest about. And that's a clue as to what is the belief driving it. So then take that answer and ask more questions about it, because maybe it's another behavior. But let's say you drive down by asking these questions and you start to realize, wow, when I was 10 years old, I was on the soccer team and we lost. And my dad came up to console me and said, hey, look, you did really well and you can do better next time. Just never settle for second best. Keep trying. Sounds like reasonable guidance to me for a 10-year-old, right? Don't settle for second best. Keep trying. Work harder. Fine. That motivated me. We won the next game. Now fast forward, you're 35, 45, 55 years old, whatever. And what are you doing? You're saying, I don't settle for second best. My car's not as good as that other one. My vacation's not as good as that other one. And I'm unhappy about that. So the belief might have been never settle for second best, which has turned into an ugly feeling. Okay. So step 3 was to figure out what is this root belief. It doesn't mean you were 10 or 5 or 20. It's whatever you figure it out to be. Step 4 then is to change it. And this is actually the easy part, Rocky. This is why change can be very easy. A lot of people think change is brute force. What happens if you cut off the leaf? The roots are still feeding that branch and the leaf will regrow. So to stop the leaf from growing back, you have to stop feeding the root. That's the root belief. So go to that belief and change it. What if your new belief was, I'll never settle for unhappiness? It's just a small tweak. Instead of I'll never settle for second best, I'll never settle for unhappiness. And now you see that car you want and you get unhappy and you go, wait a minute. I said I'm not going to settle for unhappiness. I'm going to choose to feel more happy about this instead. And every time it manifests, because you diagnosed it and you saw the different events where it happens, you can plug in the new belief as those things occur and remind yourself, and that installs the new belief. And not only does that leaf disappear, but the entire branch feeding it disappears, which affects other behaviors you didn't even know. So the more you do this, the more you figure out what are your beliefs and change them to empowering beliefs, better beliefs. And I'll tell you another secret. You'll never choose a worse belief than the one you have. It's not possible. Our brains don't work that way. So if you keep building on this, and this is what I did from age 27 to 34, I challenged every belief I could identify and changed it to a better belief, which is why I have confidence, happiness, optimism, a positive outlook on everything I'm doing. And you're not going to stop me because I'm excited about my life. I know who I am.
And I think that's a big key is your last statement. I know who I am. I think most people go through life not knowing who they are and not deciding who they want to be and moving towards it. And when you have that kind of clarity, it becomes a lot easier to do the things you want to do and to move towards the person you want to be.
Yeah, I believe that 100%. When I figured out my core purpose was to empower others to be their best version of themselves, all my choices became easier. You want me to do something that doesn't match that? I'm not going to do it. Simple.
And you have what's the right word? fortitude to stick onto your track.
Yeah,
Right?
thankfully. But it's very much in the vein of I figured out what works and it does work. So why would I steer away from what works? Why go off those rails and go into the dirt when I can stay on the road?
Which reminds me of the opposite. A lot of people get on rails that they didn't pick.
Oh yeah.
And so they're stuck going a direction not in alignment with who they are and where they want to go. And then one day they wake up and went, oh crap, got to do something different.
Rocky, you want to know what I really wish for with my book? I wish people looked at their lives and said, all the beliefs I've been given were given to me, not chosen.
Mhm.
And I want to choose the beliefs that work for me. And here's the method for how to do it. That's really what my book is for. Yeah, you could use it to change anything. I always tell people, if you have a drug addiction, please go get professional help, right? I mean, there is a role for very professional help, but if you're just trying to change how you operate in this world, look, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I don't have a negative tape loop running through my head driving me. One of the most fascinating things about this whole process is if you have a good belief, a strong, empowering beliefs, what does it do? It creates thoughts that mirror that strong, empowering belief. So, you asked me what was driving me to make money and be an entrepreneur, et cetera. I believed I could. I believed I could be anything I set my mind to. I believed I could be the person who succeeded and got out of that terrible poverty. And so if you believe those things, your thoughts are, when there's a challenge, I'll get over this challenge. I will get through this problem. And so these positive thoughts come from positive beliefs. The same is true of negative beliefs. This is why people get stuck in a trench they're digging. Like, I'll never get out of this. I'll always be poor. Nothing ever works for me. Well, look, you and I both get the same flat tire. You choose to think your life's in shambles. I look at it and say, I'm going to learn how to change a tire today. Let's go. New skill.
And it's definitely having that positive attitude and deciding what you want and moving forward to it.
Yep. I can't quote the study I just recently heard about. I need to look it up still. I think it was from Pittsburgh University or something. They did a study on what are the number one determinant of success in life. And the one thing they came back to was the most successful people all share optimism as a character trait. And he said, think about this. An optimistic person is willing to set an unrealistic expectation of themselves. Now, who is it unrealistic to, actually? You, the outsider, judging them. Oh, I could never do that. You'll never reach that. Again, going back to my own experience of people saying, no, Rich, you'll never be a millionaire by 23, which didn't happen, by the way, but I did have my dream car by 23. So that was good enough. It's all that negative. The optimistic person's willing to put out an unrealistic expectation of themselves because they're willing to keep pushing for something that is bigger than themselves because that's where they want to go to. And while everybody else is judging them as being unrealistic, they watch that optimistic person actually succeed because it wasn't unrealistic to them.
You have to decide and go for it. And you see that throughout life. People who set out big goals and everyone laughs at them until they achieve it. Yeah. And that's kind of what you need to do is go make that happen.
Yep.
It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
Feeling that you have abundance, being grateful and feeling that you have abundance with whatever you have.
And it doesn't even matter how much or how little you have.
Right? I mean, think about that. There's so many stories around that of people who've been abjectly poor and they get something that is normal to you and I, and it's a windfall to them. Right?
And that it is. What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
Man, I wish I had learned this because it was told to me so many times. Your own personal development has a very strong correlation to your success. And people kept telling me, Rich, read more books, read some more books. And I wouldn't read the books. And finally, when I got Audible and started listening to books like crazy, that's when everything started changing and growing for me. My company was more successful. My team was more successful. I was more successful. So yeah, I wish I had discovered Audible 10 years earlier.
As you can see, I love to read books.
Yeah.
If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Believe in yourself. And maybe more than that, choose what you want to believe in yourself because it is your choice.
It is. And I think at 18, that's hard because they've been told what to do for 18 years that now you're going, oh, just go do what you want. Wait, what? I haven't had practice at that yet.
I know. And it seems so trivial, like, hey, just believe in yourself. And it's a hard thing to actually put into practice. So that's why I'd like to actually say, choose what you want to believe about yourself. At 18, I chose to believe that I would be a Fortune 500 CEO. I'm not, but you know what that did for me? It caused me to be a better speaker because I saw all the Fortune 500 CEOs were excellent speakers. So I said, that's a trait I need to learn, a skill I need to learn. And it set me on the path to be a better leader and manager. So I don't care if I don't achieve Fortune 500. It's a good goal and good belief.
Well, sometimes we change our goals when we realize the price to pay and the outcome that it brings about. And so we're like, you know what? I know I had that goal, but now that I've learned more about it, that isn't really what I want. And that's okay too.
Totally fair. Yeah.
If people would like to learn more about you, the book, how do they do that?
So my company is quickforms.com. If you want to see what we're doing for the last 22 plus years, you can find me on LinkedIn at Quick Forms CEO. That's QUIK, no letter C. So Quick Forms CEO. That's an easy way to find me because Richard Walker is a pretty common name. I do have a podcast called The Customer Wins. You can find that at quickforms.com or maybe on YouTube or any audio channel like Spotify, Apple. My book, It's My Life, I Can Change If I Want To, is on Amazon for sale. I wish I had an audio version. I really need to do that for people, but you can read it. Yeah.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Rocky, thank you for having me. I really appreciate this dialogue and the kind of questions, the insightful questions you asked. Thank you.
Most welcome. Where do you need to make a change in your life? Have you taken the time to define what you want from your life? It's a core principle we always talk about. The money alone doesn't make you happy, so use it as a tool to define and create what you want, because that's really what it's all about. Next week, I've got Steve Anderson. We're going to talk about the Bezos letters, 14 principles to grow your business like Amazon. By the way, if you know someone who might enjoy today's episode, would you do me a favor and share it with them? I would appreciate that. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.